We're now going to have a look at the triggers. So the triggers are really the brains behind your automation platform. So what triggers do is that they will take a certain event, something happening, and then they will tell the rest of the system to do something else at the most basic level. So this area of the library will give some specific examples of certain trigger types. This first very short introductory video is just giving you an idea of basically how they work. And we're going to start with by just creating a new basic rule. Elsewhere in the library, you'll see some more specific videos setting up for like very common use cases, like if someone fills out a form or if someone fills out a calendar. But this introduction is just to give you an idea of really where, like what they do, right? So in this one, I'm going to call it, I've created a new trigger. I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to call this tutorial trigger. Generally, it's a good thing to name your triggers what they do so that you can easily find it again. So I don't recommend like saying trigger A, trigger B, trigger C, because it will make it very difficult to go back and edit your triggers if you ever need to make adjustments. Just like campaigns, triggers won't work if they're in draft status. They will work if they're in active status. So it's a good idea to just turn it on from the beginning if you're ready to go with a trigger. However, if you wanted to set it up but not have it do anything, then of course leave it in draft. In the actions, you will find an option to delete a given trigger or duplicate it. And so again, just reminding that when you duplicate it, make sure that you do exit and come back in to edit the correct version, right? i.e. when you duplicated it, you'll stay in the existing trigger. So I'll just explain what I meant by that in case you haven't seen it in the other triggers. So I'm going to say this is tutorial trigger 1 here, and I'm going to go duplicate, trigger 1 copy. I put it into my tutorial account and go copy. And you'll see I'm now still in tutorial trigger 1. So if I then wanted to go and edit the copy, I have to go back out and click on this, and now I'm editing the copy. The key is that you don't want to make a copy of it and then accidentally edit the original if that's not your intent. Okay, so from here, I'm also going to, in this menu, I can delete that copy, and I go back to tutorial trigger 1. So there's basically two sides of a trigger. It's one, what should trigger the rule, and two, what actions should follow. So there's two options with the what should trigger. The first one is the name of your system here, and the second one is Facebook. Right, and so when you're using Facebook, that's when you've integrated lead ads. However, that is covered in a specific video about triggers based on Facebook. So we're going to go back and use your platform here, and we're going to choose a trigger. So the options is you can set something to occur when someone is added to a campaign, when someone replies to a specific response from a campaign, when a customer books an appointment themselves, or down here you've got an appointment when any appointment is booked, a change in the stage of a pipeline. So that's like, for example, if someone goes from lead to booked to attended, that's a stage change. Trigger link clicked. So this is one of the advanced features of trigger links, is that you can actually set a trigger to occur off a trigger link. So it's something to clear up right here, is that trigger links and triggers are not related. It's just that there are two things called. So there's trigger links and then there's triggers. So when a trigger link is clicked, you can set a trigger to do something, right? Stale opportunities. What this means is that you can use a time delay. So basically, if someone's been in a certain opportunity pipeline for a given duration, you can trigger an event to happen. Form submitted. So this is a very common one. When someone submits a form, you want a series of actions to be taken. Contact tag, when a tag is added to a contact or when a tag is removed from a contact. Opportunity status changed. So we already talked about stage change. That's like between lead, booked, attended, that sort of thing. But status is we're talking about change from open to won or to lost or to abandoned. A survey submitted, similar to form submitted, but that's when a survey is submitted. Birthday reminder runs off a birthday field. Custom date reminder, similar, but it's off a custom date field. Contact DND, so when they're opted out, or when that flag is updated, you can trigger an event as well. And you can now have task reminders as well. So when a task is due, it can trigger a reminder. Okay, so We're going to just do one example here on this video, but then we'll dive into these in more depth in some very specific use cases. So we're going to use a very standard one here, form submitted, and whatever you choose up here, it's going to open up a different range of options in the filter. So I'm going to define the filter here. I'm going to say when a form is, and we're going to say the Plateau Facebook ad, and we could add a filter and say as plus one of these fields is this, right? So we're not going to do that on this case. I'm just going to keep this really simple. So when the form is Plateau Facebook ad, so when that form is submitted, we want to do this thing. Now, there's a number of things you can do here. Again, linked to either your platform or Facebook. So inside the automation system, you can choose the following actions. Add to a campaign, remove them from a campaign, a specific campaign, remove them from all campaigns. So even if they're in 2 or 3 different campaigns, it will take them out of all of them. You can add them to an opportunity pipeline. You can remove or add a contact tag. You can send an email or send an SMS. Now, these two here are specifically about notifying members of your team or you, right? So this is different. This is not like in a campaign where you're contacting the lead. This send email or send SMS step is about a notification to you or a team member. Okay, then execute webhook. If you know what webhooks are, then you'll know what that is and you can trigger a webhook to fire. And you can now set a contact to DND. So you can set a trigger if something happens to basically set their status to opt out as a contact so they don't get any more messages. Okay, so in this case, we're going to run a very simple one. We're going to go add to a campaign, and we're going to say we're going to add them to a demonstration campaign sequence. If we also wanted to send an email, we could send an email. The from address can be whatever you want it to be. So it could just be you@gmail.com or whatever your business is. And ideally not a Gmail, sorry, and then you want it to go to your notification, right? I just keep saying Gmail, but you get the idea. So it'll go from and to, and you see how this is not, you can put a custom value in here. So if you have your notification settings set in your settings area as a custom value, you can put this in here. I might actually just show you that right now. So let me just save this email so we don't lose it. We'll go into settings and I'll show you something you can do here. So within your custom values in settings, see how we've got best email contact? You might actually choose to use that. So I can actually copy that bit of text there about that key, and then I can go back to my trigger and I can send this email to that email, right? So that will actually work there. Note, if you're doing this for an SMS and you're using that custom values here, when you add a custom value as the phone number, you will need to put the dialing code in, right? So whatever your country is, so say it was the United States, it would be +1 and then the number. If it was Australia, it would be +61, then the number, and so on, right? So you need to put in the full dialing code if you're using a custom value. I'll give you an example, notification SMS. So if I was sending it to Australia, for example, I would put that O2 like that, right? Because if I just did that, same for the US, so it was like 252 something, I'd have to make it +1 and then the rest of the number. Okay, so that's just for if you were doing doing this, and I was going to copy this and have this within my triggers as a send SMS like that. Well, make sure you don't have that space in there, then that will work. Again, it's always a good idea to test these things. Once you put your message in, test message, whatever, save SMS. You can send a test SMS, but that's actually sending to, oh, yep, that will actually send to that, right? So you can then check that that actually worked, right? So that's how you would do that. Same, you can do the same thing with email. Okay, but again, I'm just giving you an overview in this email of what triggers are. From here, What you can do is look through the library here for a trigger that's closest to what you want to do. So for example, there'll be a video specifically to triggers related to appointments, and there'll be a video specific to triggers from forms. Okay, so this is not a lot of depth into what you would run the trigger for a form. That'll be in a lot more detail in the next video.